afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. It's often said that there are only two certainties in life, birth and death. Well, of course, taxes too, so that would be three. Well, death is a subject that we often struggle to talk about openly, but that's changing, and it's changing in part because of the efforts of some Vermonters. The Wake Up to Dying project encourages people to think and talk about dying. It's a national awareness campaign that was started in Vermont in 2013. Our guest this afternoon is the founder and executive director of the Wake Up to Dying project. I want to welcome Nina Thompson. Thanks so much for being with us. This is such a huge topic.
Yeah.
What is the project all about?
So the Wake Up to Dying project is an awareness and action campaign. We are encouraging people to think and to talk about dying, and we're doing this through story and through art and through hands-on opportunities to engage the general public in the topic. Mm-hmm. And we actually think that if we do this, we will encourage people to be more prepared, both practically and emotionally, for the shared human experience. We also think that if we pay more attention to the fact that we die, we'll pay more attention to the way we choose to live. And that could be a really good thing, right? Mm-hmm. So be more prepared and get more out of life. Those are our points.
As I mentioned, that you're the executive director and founder. How did you come to start this project?
Well, I would say that the real initiating event was when my dad died. Mm-hmm. It was about 10 years ago, and he died in Minneapolis sort of suddenly, and I had to go back home to be with the family and deal with the situation. And while we were planning his memorial, we were all sitting around in the living room, and I said, I'm going to build a box for his ashes. I just declared this, and my family was like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, no, really, I want to build a box for his ashes. And my grandmother said, don't be ridiculous, Nina. Go to the funeral home. Go pick it out. I'll pay for it. That's what they do. And I said, well, I'm from Vermont, and we build things, and that's what we do. So I went off to do that, but I'm a Vermonter without a workshop, actually. So
some problems.
Yeah, so I had to figure out how to do that, and what I did is I brought my community around and brought a lot of people to the process, and in the end, we had this beautiful box. But what I realized is that everyone who helped me actually had an experience with it for themselves. It wasn't about my dad, it was about them. And it just struck me, we don't pay attention to this topic as a culture. We want to avoid it. But so that set me off to start some sort of project. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about this, bringing community back, and I had this idea that we really needed to engage people through story. And I was telling this woman at a dinner party that I had just met about these two ideas, community, back to death, and story. And she said, I'm actually an audio story producer, and I just interviewed a friend over the last 3 months of her life. And we used some of that story at her funeral. And it was incredibly powerful. And we met later, and the Wake Up to Dying project was born.
Did it occur to you maybe that this probably was part of the process of dealing, obviously, with your father's death, but maybe part of his legacy too? Maybe it was through this that he was saying to you, look, Nina, maybe there's more you could do here.
Yeah, I think about him all the time. Even though it's been 10 years and we just started this 3 years ago, I'm sure he's up there saying, get people to think and talk about this. It's the best thing for everybody. What
can people learn from each other when we talk about these experiences?
Well, we use story really primarily to get people, and it's first-person stories about their experience. So we interview people who are dying, so they can talk about what that feels like. People describe what it feels like to get a diagnosis. Caregivers talk about what it's like to be a caregiver. We interview people about different ways of being creative in memorial and in ritual. So we can learn something from every one of those stories about how this experience might go for us and how we might want it to go for us. So you see, it's like we wake people up to thinking about the idea sort of through side angles. And then the next thing you know, they're considering what they want and maybe even sharing what they want and coming to terms with the fact that it happens.
And so what are some of the examples that you've heard, maybe some of the creative things that people will hear in these stories?
Well, one of the things is we learn a lot about how to show up for each other, what it's like for somebody to receive visitors and how sometimes that can be exhausting, but how that can be also wonderful. Mm-hmm. We can learn simple things like it's okay to ask your mom what it feels like to be dying, or it's okay to hold your grandfather's hand. Or like in my case, it's okay to build a box for your dad's ashes. These are, we learn things that we hadn't considered. and how to talk to each other. I think that's a really big takeaway. How do we actually talk to each other about this, and that we can talk about it, right? We don't want to talk about it.
Because you always hear, at funerals, people saying, "Oh, I would never had the chance to tell this person this."
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of our themes, I would say, in our stories. Sort of pointing out little regrets. The other thing that happened, my dad wanted a picture of my dog, and I just never sent it to him. So, and then all of a sudden he died suddenly, and it's just a silly thing. All I had to do was put a picture in an envelope and send it off to him, and I never did that. So that's just this tiny little bit of regret, and that's one of the beauties of actually thinking and talking about this early is we can reduce regrets. We can say we're sorry, we can be more loving and kind, and we can be more prepared. And that's critical because your family is left, if you die, your family's left with the situation, and if you didn't express your wishes,
there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and we don't want to make up what you wanted because we'll always feel guilty that we didn't do what Mom wanted if she didn't tell us what she wanted.
Do you hear things like people say, "I'm going to throw a big party, see everybody, tell them how much I love them all, and it's okay, see you on the other side"?
Yes, we actually have a story like that about, we've interviewed somebody recently who they did their own, or their mom did their own memorial before. So, but the stories are beautiful, they're poignant and they're insightful, they're humorous, they're sad, they are funny. There are some that are really funny. It's just life, right? It's life, and we can learn from each other by listening to each other's experience. And then we can know something right now, or it may take 5 years from now. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, I remember that woman actually did a memorial for herself before she died. I think I'm going to do that,
So the project's traveling exhibit is coming to Burlington in July from the 12th through the 17th. What will people see and experience when they come to this exhibit? What does it look like?
Well, if we're walking outside of the Fletcher Free Library, July 12th through the 17th, you are going to see 2 big white tents, and you're going to see this big chalkboard that says, "Before I die, I want to," and you'll see people milling about. And if you were to get off the sidewalk and go into one of the tents, what you'll see are people sitting and listening to audio stories in surround sound. We actually have a 90-minute loop of audio stories in a tent with furniture, and on the walls there's artwork. It's beautiful, related artwork. And then if you went across the courtyard and you went into the other tent, you would see a bunch of resources. You'd see brochures about green burial or home funeral or advanced directive booklets, and you'd see a library of books on the topic. And then you'd see that big chalkboard, and you might add your 2 cents to it, your bucket list item. And then you'll see a big schedule of events. We have actually 13 different workshops and chats and panels, discussions going on.
Do people think it's a little morbid?
Yeah, they do. I mean, we, again, as a society, we don't want to think about it and talk about it. So we're afraid of it. Right? We can't control it. We don't know what to expect. And we've sort of grown up thinking that you're not supposed to talk about it. So we avoid it. So that's one of the reasons I think people avoid it.
Tell us about some of the specific workshops and panels, because sounds like there's some fun stuff, but it also sounds like there's a lot of really good practical information because, there are some details you have to take care of.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the philosophy of the Wake After Dying is to offer something for everybody. We have a wide variety of stories, something for everybody. If you go to the event, there's something for everybody. And if you look at the workshop package, there's something there for everybody. So there are workshops on advanced directives and wills and how to plan your funeral. So those are the practical ones you're talking about. There's a spiritual perspective, so we bring that in. There's emotional perspectives, where there's one called Living Well, Dying Well, and in that workshop we invite the local end-of-life professionals, doctors and nurses and hospice volunteers, to tell us what they've learned in end of life and to share with us how working in end of life has changed the way they want to live and also the way they want to die. There's poetry and prose. So we're looking at using poetry and prose to explore what it means to be a caregiver, how that goes, and even a workshop to help kids. So there's really something for everybody.
That's a really big issue, talking to kids about this,
Yeah.
starting the conversations early. What are some of the things that you have to really kind of navigate when you think about that?
Well, I would invite you to come to that workshop and learn that. I am not the expert on working with kids, but what we try to do is set a stage for people. So we've invited the people from the University of Vermont Medical Center who do end-of-life specialty, and the VNA specialist who does like Camp Echo, to come and to do a presentation, and they'll be able to share with you what the best thing to do there is.
So you've been doing these exhibits now for a while. What's been the impact? What have you heard from folks?
Yeah, over 2,000 people joined us last year.
Really?
Yeah, we did 3 events, and over 2,000 people engaged with us. We were in Brattleboro and Burlington and Boston, and one of the biggest things that happened is we do surveys, of course, and more than 80% of the people said that they are more likely, or much more likely after coming to our event, to go out and to want to talk about it and to do more to educate themselves about it. We broke down a little bit of that fear barrier. And the other stat I'm really excited about is that 3 out of 4 people that came to the event said they're more likely to help a loved one at end of life. 76%. And for me, as a hospice volunteer and a volunteer chaplain, that's wonderful. I really want people to show up for each other at end of life.
How do you start that conversation? Because I've had, relatives who've passed away, and I would have liked to have been part of that, I think, but I didn't want to sort of intrude. It's sort of a kind of a really personal time of your life.
You mean to come in? Yeah, that's
to be like, I want to see you, but do you want to see me?
Right. Well, one of the things that I always recommend is that there is, you have to have the conversation. The people that are dying and the family have to think about this over time and ask mom, aunt, whoever, do you want people to come around or don't you? And then somebody in that family can communicate that. But if we don't think about it and we don't talk about it, then we're all left guessing. And in my experience, we don't want to be there. We want to be thinking about it and talking about it. Somebody says they don't want to think about it or talk about it, the next thing you know, I've heard 3 of their stories. Right?
Yeah. Now, as part of the exhibit, you mentioned the bucket list. What are some of the things that people put down on that? I mean, I would never put skydiving. That just isn't going to happen no matter what.
But that gets put up there a lot.
Does it really?
Yeah. The bucket list item, it's just an easy entry point. It's the first way to really start thinking about it. It's like, life is short and precious, and what do I want to do with it? So people put, I want to climb a mountain, I want to learn French, I want to see my grandchildren, stuff like that. But we've had emotional things. I want to get a kidney for my mom. Stuff like that has gone up there. But more than that, it is the ideas of learning something, doing something, and accomplishing something.
So what else do you want people to know about the exhibit event?
Well, I'd like to point out that we bring a lot of people together. We have 100 volunteer slots, and we have 12 different community partners that have helped us actually produce this event. So we bring a diverse group of people together. I know you're seeing all those names, but I won't read through them. But what I think is so wonderful is how diverse they are. And these are the organizations that are doing the work in end of life. And we think we are creating a stage and bringing everybody together to meet each other, to turn towards each other, and to explore this, death, dying, and life in a way that works for them.
Before you're in some sort of a crisis situation.
Before the end.
Yeah, can you imagine having all those details taken care of?
Yeah, details, emotional and practical details.
Well, we're coming near the end of the program. Remind people when the traveling exhibit is coming to Burlington and how they can find out more about that project.
We will be in Burlington the July 12th through the 17th. The actual exhibit tents will be up Thursday the 14th, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 10 to about 7:30 every day. The workshops start a couple days early on that Tuesday. But if you go to our website, wakeuptodyingproject.org, and you'll see a full schedule of events, all the descriptions, and we'll even have the panelists up there soon.
And what does it cost?
Nothing.
It's
Zero. Free. Everything is free and open to the public.
And once again, the importance of starting these conversations with your friends, with your family.
Well, we want people to be more prepared, practically and emotionally, and also to live more fully. And you can't do that if you aren't thinking about the fact that life is finite.
And precious.
And precious.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.